In June 1980, the film begins with a view of bleak, wide-open land in West Texas. Sheriff Bell, Tommy Lee Jones, tells of the changing times in a voiceover. In the old days, some sheriffs never wore guns, as did his late father, who was the sheriff before him. In the modern era, however, Bell once sent an unrepentant teenage boy to the electric chair who had killed a girl simply because he wanted to kill someone, had been fixin' to do it for some time, and would do it again if given the chance. Anton Chigurh is apprehended by a deputy on a desert roadway. They return to the deserted police station, where the deputy dials Sheriff Bell's number. He informs the sheriff about an unusual item in Chigurh's hands. The deputy believes it is an oxygen tank, but it is actually a mechanism used at the slaughterhouse to murder livestock. The deputy has his back to Chigurh, who creeps up behind him and garrotes the deputy with the handcuff chain just as he hangs up the phone. Chigurh steals a police vehicle and, while driving along a desert highway, uses the car's lights and siren to stop a random driver, Chip Love, driving a Ford sedan. He respectfully requests that the man exit the vehicle. Chigurh then motions for the man to stop and pushes the captive bolt gun linked to the pressurized air tank against the befuddled driver's brow. When he squeezes the trigger, the bolt is fired into the man's head, killing him. Chigurh then drives away in the man's automobile. Llewellyn Moss, Josh Brolin, is hunting pronghorns in the desert. He fires his hunting gun at one of the animals, dispersing them. He discovers a blood trail as he walks to where the herd was. When he realizes the pronghorn has gone in a different direction than the blood trail, he notices an injured pit bull staggering away. Moss follows the dog's track until he comes to 6 pickup vehicles parked in the middle of nowhere. Mexican criminals and pit bulls are dead on the ground, and only the driver is surviving. The driver begs Moss for water, but Moss replies he doesn't have any. Moss inquires about the location of the last guy remaining, the winner, but receives no response. He gently removes the man's submachine pistol from his seat as well as a magazine from his shirt pocket. Moss discovers what looks to be a large amount of heroin behind a tarp in the bed of one pickup. Moss follows the lone surviving criminal to a tree, where he discovers the man has dead. He discovers a huge catalog case with $2 million and a .45 caliber weapon. He grabs both the money and the pistol. He comes home and conceals the submachine gun beneath his mobile home. Carla Jean, Kelly MacDonald, his wife, is upset that he has been gone all day and refuses to tell her where he acquired the weapon and catalog case. She inquires about the contents of the case but does not trust him when he casually informs her that it is full of money. That night, Moss wakes up guiltily, wanting to take water to the injured driver. He arrives early in the morning and parks a short distance away on a hill. He brings a gallon of water to the shootout, only to learn that the wounded guy was murdered by a shotgun shell to the head. Looking back to where he'd parked his pickup vehicle atop the incline, Moss notices another truck parked alongside his in the early morning light. 2 males emerge and appear to cut the tires of his truck. He tries to hide behind one of the vehicles, but is shot upon by the guys who are now arriving in their truck, which is equipped with brilliant searchlights. More gunmen arrive, damage his truck, and open fire, striking him in the shoulder. Moss retreats, but is struck in the shoulder by a shotgun shell just as he reaches a river embankment. As Moss tumbles towards the river as morning breaks, the 2 guys, who appear to be Mexicans, dispatch a pit bull after him. Moss dives into the river and swims downstream, ultimately getting to the other side as the pit bull closes in on him. Moss hastily ejects an empty round from the .45, reloads the gun, and kills the dog as it rushes at him on the other bank. He heals his wounds as he realizes he is dealing with deadly people. He comes home and leaves Carla Jean to remain with her mother in Odessa while he travels with the money separately. Chigurh goes to pay for candies at the petrol station after filling up the dead man's Ford at a gas station, Gene Jones. The proprietor attempts nice chat out of simple goodwill, but Chigurh is irritated by the inane small talk, and the proprietor finds himself in an odd, heated encounter. The worker is bewildered by his customer's uneasiness and tries to defuse the situation by stating that he needs to close the station, which frustrates Chigurh even more because it is still lunchtime. Chigurh asks him to flip a coin to determine if the guy will win everything, and hence whether the man will live or perish. The clerk guesses heads, and Chigurh hands the coin to the man. He instructs him not to combine it with any other currencies. Later that night, Chigurh is driven to the location of the botched drug sale by two well-dressed individuals. He examines the bodies after removing the vent tag from Moss's vehicle door. The well-dressed guys provide him a tracking device with which they claim to be receiving not a bleep, which he may use to locate the catalog case of money, which has a transponder but has yet to receive any signals. Chigurh pulls up a handgun close to one of the dead men and murders both of them. The next morning, Sheriff Bell, Tommy Lee Jones, and Deputy Wendell, Garrett Dillahunt, come to a report of a burning automobile and identify the Ford as belonging to the deceased motorist. They follow tire tracks to the location of the shootout, where Sheriff Bell recognizes Moss's pickup. He and Wendell thoroughly examine the site before deciding to contact federal authorities. The heroin has been removed from the back of the truck. Chigurh comes to Moss and Carla Jean's trailer and breaks the lock with the captive bolt gun. The trailer is vacant but hastily evacuated, but he discovers a phone bill in the unopened mail that suggests the pair made several calls to Odessa, Texas. He attempts to scare the trailer park manager, Kathy Lampkin, into exposing Moss's workplace and appears to consider murdering her, but flees when he hears commotion in the adjacent room. Moss boards a bus with his wife and promises her that he would contact her in a few days. He takes a cab from the bus terminal to a motel, where he books a room and hides the money case deep in the HVAC duct with the use of a closet clothes bar. Moss checks out of the motel and goes shopping for boots and socks. Moss hails a cab back to his motel, but a vehicle parked outside raises his suspicions, and he instructs the driver to take him to another accommodation. Meanwhile, Chigurh dials numbers from the phone bill to attempt to figure out where Moss is going. He then starts driving, attempting to guess where Moss is going. Moss goes to a nearby sporting goods store the next morning and buys a tent for its poles, duct tape, wire cutters, and a 12-gauge shotgun and ammo. He goes back to the second hotel room and saws off the shotgun barrel and stock. He returns to his original hotel and hires a second room just behind his first. It has the same HVAC duct as his previous room. In the second room, he fashions a hook out of tent poles, duct tape, and coat hangers to remove the catalog case full of money from the HVAC vent. When the tracking device goes off, Chigurh is driving by the hotel. He locates the hotel and determines which room the signal is originating from based on the frequency of its beeping, Moss's first room. Chigurh hires a room and removes his boots so he can stroll up to the room where the signal is coming from silently. He enters the room with his captive bolt gun. Chigurh enters the room and murders 3 Mexicans with a silenced shotgun. Moss, who is in the other room, is alerted by the Mexicans firing. Chigurh looks around the room for the case before discovering the HVAC vent. He opens it to reveal the traces left by the case. Moss flees into the night with the money, hitchhiking out of the region. The driver, Matthew Greer, who takes him up, advises him not to hitchhike since it is risky. The following day, at a high-rise office building in Dallas, a bounty hunter named Carson Wells, Woody Harrelson, enters in a spacious office of a businessman, Stephen Root. The businessman is outraged by Chigurh's numerous murders. He wants Wells to keep the issue under control. Wells informs the businessman that he has already dealt with Chigurh and knows him by sight. Chigurh is also compared to the bubonic plague by Wells, who labels him a psychotic murderer. Wells is hired by the businessman to manage the problem with Chigurh and collect the money. Moss gets a room in an older, decrepit multi-story hotel in a border town. Unable to sleep, he appears to be pondering how Chigurh followed him down to the last hotel. He goes through the case and discovers the transponder that Chigurh has been using to track him down. He notices strange noises and contacts the receptionist who checked him in at the front desk. The clerk, Mark Miles, said he'd be on until 10 a.m. the next morning, but he doesn't answer. He notices the shadow of feet beneath his door, but the hall lights go off. Chigurh fires the captive bolt gun through the lock, striking Moss. Someone shoots his shotgun through the door. Moss then throws the case out the second-story window and proceeds to pursue it. Chigurh fires from the window but misses. The door lock injures Moss in the side. Moss approaches a pickup truck driver, loose reins, and instructs him to drive him away, but Chigurh murders the guy. Moss ducks and drives the truck around a turn, colliding with another car. He hides behind a neighboring car and keeps an eye out of a store window for whomever is following him. He shoots Chigurh and injures him. Moss drives the pickup to the adjacent Rio Grande, where he buys a jacket from some passing kids on the border bridge and throws the money case into some undergrowth along the bank. He wears the jacket over his bloodied shirt and, masquerading as a drunk Mexican, waves the bottle of beer drunkenly at the half-sleeping Mexican border officer as he stumbles through. Sheriff Bell is still worried by what he witnessed in the desert and the world's allegedly declining moral standards. He pays a visit to Carla Jean in Odessa and requests that she put him in touch with her spouse. He tells her almost absent-mindedly how a neighboring farmer was nearly murdered by an animal he was attempting to butcher, and how slaughterhouses now utilize compressed air cannons to instantly kill livestock. Chigurh, injured in the thigh by a buckshot bullet, sets a car on fire as a distraction and casually takes medical supplies in the border town. He rips off his pants and fixes his wound in a hotel room. Carson pays a visit to Moss in the Mexican hospital and advises him to just hand over the money so Carson can protect him. Moss refuses, and Carson informs him where he'll be staying. Carson notices the catalog case from the bridge on his way back across the border. Carson is accosted by Chigurh at his hotel, the same one where Moss was staying. Carson tries to make a deal with Chigurh for his life, but Chigurh murders him as the phone rings. Chigurh calls Moss and tells him that if he delivers him the money, he would not murder his wife, but he cannot do the same for Moss. Chigurh informs Moss that he knows precisely where he is and, Moss leaves the hospital with the case. Carla Jean is called at her mother's house in Odessa and told to travel to El Paso to see him. Meanwhile, Chigurh travels to Dallas and murders the businessman who hired not just Carson but also the Mexicans. When his vehicle breaks down, a chicken farmer, Chris Warner, arrives with a load full of chicken cages to assist. Chigurh inquires as to the location of the nearest airport. El Paso is the farmer's name, and Chigurh asks him whether the chicken cages may be removed from the truck. Later, he is at a car wash, cleaning the chicken feathers off the rear of the truck. Carla Jean and her mother, Beth Grant, are followed to the airport by Mexicans who have been following her in Odessa. One of the Mexicans assists her mother with her suitcase, and she informs him that she and Carla Jean are on their way to El Paso. The Mexican inquires as to the hotel she and her mother are staying in order to determine Moss's whereabouts, and she responds. Carla Jean phones Sheriff Bell from the airport and informs him where Moss is staying in El Paso. A lady, Anna Reeder, sunbathes near the pool and flirts with Moss. She invites him to her room for a beer, but he rejects because he is married and knows what beer leads to. Sheriff Bell is on his way to Moss's hotel when he hears automatic gunshots and notices a pickup truck rushing away. Sheriff Bell arrives at the motel and notices a significant number of empty shot shells on the ground beside the pool, where a lady is floating lifeless. He then discovers Llewellyn Moss dead in his room's open doorway. The money case has gone missing. When Carla Jean comes, all Sheriff Bell can do is console her. Later that night, Sheriff Bell and the local sheriff, Roger Boyce, enjoy coffee and lament America's eroding values. Following that, Sheriff Bell returns to the hotel and narrowly avoids being killed by Chigurh, who was searching the room for the money case. Sheriff Bell meets his uncle, Ellis, Barry Corbin, to inform him that he is retiring because of the violence he has witnessed. Ellis tells him he's being egotistical and tells him about Sheriff Bell's grandfather, who was shot by 8 outlaws and died in his wife's arms on his front porch as they watched. Meanwhile, Chigurh pays a visit to Carla Jean, who has recently buried her mother. She understands why he's there, yet it's still meaningless to her. Chigurh tosses a coin, but Carla Jean refuses to participate. Carla Jean criticizes Chigurh's game, claiming that he, not the coin, determines whether or not to murder her. He is unfazed, though, and insists on his lack of a free will. As he drives away, he notices the same 2 youngsters in his rearview mirror when he is hit broadside by a car rushing through the junction. Chigurh emerges from his automobile, his arm bone protruding from his elbow. The 2 neighborhood lads approach him to check on him. Chigurh gives one of the kids his shirt, which he uses to fashion a sling for his arm, and begs them to inform the authorities that he has already departed. Chigurh hobbles down the street. At Sheriff Bell's residence, the sheriff discusses his plans for the day with his wife, Loretta, Tess Harper. He is restless in retirement, but she declines his offer to help out around the house because it would disrupt her set pattern. He recalls a dream about his sheriff father. Bell had a dream that he and his father were riding across a mountain pass at night. His father rode ahead into the darkness, carrying a horn with embers that gleamed like moonlight. Even though he couldn't see much in the dark night, Bell imagined that he kept riding forward because his father would be waiting for him with a warm fire.